reborn to the day my enemy's daughter disguised herself as a man to become my father's disciple. I asked him, "Why are you wearing a woman's earrings?" Play the full story in one go. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The exciting story begins right now. The scent of sandalwood was a bit overpowering, so strong that my temples began to throb. I suddenly opened my eyes to find myself facing a scene so familiar it made my heart tremble. My father, Sujinda, was sitting in a sandalwood armchair, twirling his long beard as he looked down with a look of satisfaction at the young man kneeling before him. The young man wore a moon-white scholar's robe that had been washed until it was almost white. His back was held straight as a rod, and he looked just like a solitary, proud pine tree in the cold. "Ning Wenqing, your father and I were old friends. Now that he has passed away, you will make your home with the Su family from now on. As long as you study diligently, I will teach you everything I have learned in my lifetime." My father's voice was clear and strong, exuding the refinement of a literary master. Ning Wenqing bowed deeply, his voice clear and gentle. "I, Ning Wenqing, thank you, master, for your guidance. I will not disappoint your high expectations, nor will I bring dishonor to my father's good name." I clenched my fists tightly. The stinging pain of my fingernails digging into my flesh reminded me that this wasn't a dream, I had truly returned. The story returns to Ning Wenqing, also known as Ning Wanqing, on the day she entered the Su family disguised as a man. In my past life, I was moved by her tragic background, and seeing how exceptionally talented she was, I pleaded with my father to take her on as a disciple. I regarded her as a close confidant and even stood up for her when she was slandered. But who could have imagined that hidden beneath that youthful exterior lay a heart steeped in malice? She used the Su family's reputation to pave her way to becoming a powerful minister of the court, only to later turn on my father and falsely accuse him of colluding with foreign enemies, resulting in the entire Su family being exiled. As for me, I was cast aside as the daughter of a traitor and banished to the coal palace. On that bitterly cold winter night, she donned a blindingly red gown and personally forced the poisoned wine down my throat. "Ruer, what's wrong with you today? Go say hello to your junior brother," my father said gently when he saw me standing there in a daze. I suppressed the hatred churning in my eyes, put on a gentle smile, and walked slowly forward. Ning Wenqing looked up at me, her beautiful eyes concealing a profound pretense. At that moment, she still looked like that unappreciated, gentle, and refined young man living in poverty. "When Qing greets you, senior sister," she said, bowing respectfully. Instead of offering a half-hearted support as I had in my previous life, I stopped 3 feet in front of her, tilted my head slightly, and studied her face with an intense gaze. Ning Wenqing seemed a little flustered under my gaze and instinctively lowered her eyes. I noticed her earlobes. Although they had been carefully treated with a secret potion in an attempt to conceal the marks, 2 extremely tiny indentations were still visible in the sunlight at this close range. The young master is indeed quite handsome, with delicate features. If it weren't for that scholar's robe, he'd look just like a pampered young lady from some wealthy family. I chuckled softly, a touch of teasing in my voice. Her father furrowed his brow slightly. "Ruer, don't be rude." Ning Wenqing's expression froze for a moment, then she said gently, "Senior sister, you're joking. I come from a poor background, so perhaps I lack some of the rough-and-tumble spirit typical of men. I hope you won't hold it against me." "Is that so?" I took a few light steps forward to get a little closer, then suddenly pointed at her earlobe. "Then what's the story with this piercing mark on your earlobe? I've never heard of any custom among the men of our great Qi where they pierce their ears." As soon as those words were spoken, the atmosphere in the room suddenly grew tense. Ning Wenqing's face turned pale in an instant. She instinctively raised her hand to cover her ears, but stopped mid-motion and instead smoothed back the stray strands of hair at her temples. My father's gaze then shifted to Ning Wenqing's earlobe. He was a man who placed great importance on propriety. Among the upright scholars, there was a strong belief that one's body and hair are gifts from one's parents. "A ring mark?" My father set down his teacup, his brow furrowed. "Wenqing, what's going on here?" Ning Wenqing lifted the hem of his robe and bowed his head deeply, his voice tinged with 3 parts grievance and 7 parts fear. My revered teacher, please allow me to explain. When I was young, my family faced great hardship. When my father was gravely ill, a wandering Taoist priest once said that my life force was too weak and that I likely would not live past the age of 12. If I were to survive, I would have to be raised as a girl and pampered. My mother had no choice but to pierce my ears and raise me as a girl until I was 10. This was merely a temporary measure to ensure my survival. It was never my intention to deceive you. His words were flawless, even tinged with a hint of filial piety and suffering. In my past life, I was completely taken in by her smooth talk. I even felt sorry for her because of her tragic background, and spoke up for her many times in front of my father. Upon hearing this, the suspicion in my father's eyes faded by more than half, and he sighed. It's true that poor families do have this custom. Well, it's a bitter chapter in life. Now that you've joined my Su family, let's not speak of these old matters anymore. I stood to the side, a mocking smile playing at the corners of my mouth. So that's how it is. I suppose I was a bit too forward, I said softly, though the chill in my eyes remained. However, since young Master Ning intends to study at the Su household, he will eventually seek official rank and bring honor to his family. Although the mark on my ear stems from an old custom from my childhood, if outsiders were to see it and rumors began circulating that I am too feminine, it might tarnish my father's reputation. After all, among my father's students, there has never been such a delicate scholar. Ning Wenqing had her head down. I couldn't make out her expression, but I could see that the tips of her fingers, braced against the ground, had turned slightly white. Senior sister is right. Wenqing will certainly be careful with her words and actions and will never bring dishonor to my mentor. Her voice was a little strained. Father waved his hand. All right, Ruar. Wenqing has just arrived, and as the eldest sister, it's only right that you look after her. Don't keep testing her with your words. Go tell your mother to prepare a vegetarian feast. Tonight, the whole family will gather to welcome Wenqing. Yes. I bowed obediently. As I walked out of the main hall, I passed Ning Wenqing. She tilted her head slightly, and a flash of venom darted across her cold eyes, so fleeting it was impossible to catch. I sneered inwardly. Ning Wenqing, this is only the beginning. You owe the Su family a debt from your past life, and in this life, I'll make you pay it back bit by bit. Back in the inner chamber, his mother, Mrs. Han, was cutting out paper flowers. Ruer, what do you think of that student your father took in? Mother asked casually as she snipped off a wilted rosebush branch. I sat down next to my mother and helped her arrange the flower branches, speaking in a matter-of-fact tone. He does have some talent, but he's a bit too deep in thought. He doesn't seem like a pure scholar. My mother put down the scissors she was holding and looked at me in surprise. You're such a kid, you're usually so fond of talent, so why the sudden change of heart today? My daughter just feels that there are plenty of people in this world who look familiar on the surface but whose true nature remains a mystery. Father has a noble character and always gives people the benefit of the doubt, but with the Su family now in the spotlight, we have no choice but to be cautious. I lowered my voice, my expression somber. Seeing how serious I was, my mother's smile faded. You mean his pierced ear? The piercings are just one thing. Mother, think about it, if it were really to ward off evil spirits, one piercing would have been enough. Why do I see marks on both of his ears? Moreover, those marks are smooth and natural, they look as if they were caused by wearing heavy objects over many years, not like something casually pierced during childhood. In my past life, in the Coal Palace, I saw Ning Wenqing dressed as a woman again. She loved to wear that heavy, filigree gold pendant. My mother's expression darkened. If that's really the case, this person must have had an ulterior motive for infiltrating the Su family. Mother, please don't worry just yet, it's only my speculation at this point. Since Father has already taken him in, let's just wait and see how things play out. Still, there are some areas in the house where we'll need to keep an eye on him. No sooner had I finished speaking than I heard the butler's voice from outside the door. Madam, Xie Heng, the Crown Prince of the Marquis of Dingbei, requests an audience. When I heard that name, my breath caught in my throat for a moment. Xie Heng. In a past life, he was my fiancé. But during the conspiracy that engulfed the Su family, Ning Wanqing deliberately fabricated the false impression that he and I were having an affair, then turned against us at a critical moment, accusing the Xie family of harboring treasonous intentions all along. To save the Xie family, Xie Heng was forced to flee beyond the Great Wall, never to see me again, not in this life or the next. In this lifetime, I had thought it would be a long time before I saw him again. Please, come in, my mother said, quickly standing up. A moment later, a young man dressed in a dark blue robe walked into the courtyard. He was exceptionally tall, with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. His every movement exuded a fierce, warlike aura typical of the frontier, yet it was skillfully suppressed by the refined upbringing of a distinguished family. He bowed to his mother, and when his gaze fell on me, he paused briefly. Xie Heng greets his aunt and Miss Su. His voice was deep, like a piece of uncarved ancient jade. Why are you free to visit our home today, Prince Xie? My mother asked with a smile. Xie Heng took a stack of manuscripts from his robe. My father heard that Prime Minister Su had recently acquired a rare, one-of-a-kind copy of a work by a great scholar from a previous dynasty, so he specifically instructed me to deliver it to you. In addition, my father would like to ask His Excellency the Prime Minister for some guidance on my recent writings. I know this is just an excuse. The Xie family has a background in military service, and my father has never thought much of Xie Heng's writing. Xie Heng, for his part, has always gone out of his way to avoid my father. He probably came because he heard that the Su family had taken on a new apprentice today. In my past life, Xie Heng had already begun to suspect Ning Wanqing around this time. He had keen intuition and always felt that there was something off about that young man. Unfortunately, back then, I was completely devoted to defending Ning Wanqing. I even got into a huge argument with Xie Heng because of his prejudice against him. My father is in his study. Prince Xie, please follow me. I stood up and led the way. As we walked down the copybook gallery, Xie Heng trailed half a step behind me. Miss Su, he said suddenly, his voice very low, I hear that the new student Prime Minister Su took on today is a distant relative of yours? He's not a distant relative, just the son of an old friend of my father's, I replied without turning around. I caught a glimpse of that man at the door just now. Xie Heng fell silent for a moment, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. He carries himself well, but his gaze is shifty, he doesn't seem like someone with an open heart. Miss Su, you should still be on your guard. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. When Xie Heng saw me staring at him, he probably assumed I would defend my father's student as I usually did. He furrowed his brow slightly, as if he were already prepared for my rebuttal. But I smiled brightly, my eyes sparkling. Thank you for the reminder, Crown Prince. Qingruo also feels that this junior brother Ning harbors quite a few secrets. Xie Heng was clearly taken aback. He didn't seem to expect me to react that way. His jet-black pupils contracted slightly. You know? Of course. I took a step closer to him and caught a faint scent of soapberry on him, the scent I missed most from my past life. Not only does he have ulterior motives, but he's even using a false identity. Xie Heng's gaze instantly turned sharp. Are you saying? Shoo. I pressed my index finger to my lips in a gesture to keep quiet. If the Crown Prince is so inclined, why not play a little game with me? Let's see just how long this young Master Ning can keep his secret. Xie Heng stared at me for a long time, then suddenly the corners of his mouth turned up slightly, revealing a very faint smile. Since Miss Su is in such a good mood, Xie Heng will certainly be happy to join her. He had always been a very cold person, but at that moment, I saw a warmth in his eyes that I had never seen before in my entire life. I know that in this life, I am no longer fighting this battle alone. On the way to the study with Xie Heng, they happened to run into Ning Wenqing coming out of it. She was wearing a clean, light blue long robe and holding several scrolls of manuscript in her arms. When she saw Xie Heng, she paused for a moment, then respectfully stepped aside. When Qing greets Crown Prince Xie. Xie Henglian didn't even glance at her. He walked right past her. But as I passed by her, I deliberately stopped and said softly, "Junior brother Ning, it's quite windy in this mansion. If your earlobe starts to bother you, be sure to let your elder sister know. I have some excellent medicine that reduces swelling and dissipates bruising. It's perfect for more delicate skin." Ning Wenqing's body jolted violently, and the manuscript in his arms nearly fell to the floor. Without paying attention to her reaction, I cheerfully led Xie Heng away. In this round, I'm going to make her walk on thin ice right from the start. When the third prince, Liu, paid a visit, the spring peach blossoms at the Su residence were in full bloom. He was dressed in a bright yellow princely robe, with a gold-threaded belt featuring an openwork dragon design tied around his waist. He fancied a famous artisan's folding fan in his hand. Though he appeared dashing and charming, the calculating gleam in his eyes was impossible to hide. I stood at the corner of the corridor, watching him put on an act of humility in front of my father, and my stomach churned uncontrollably. In a past life, he used this very face to deceive me and the Su family. He promised my father that he would love only me for the rest of his life, yet in the very first year after his accession to the throne, he heeded Ning Wenqing's slanderous accusations and had the entire Su family thrown into prison. Sitting on the imperial throne, he watched coldly as my phoenix robe was stripped from me. He even tacitly approved of Ning Wenqing's cruel tactics when it came to that cup of poison wine. Your Excellency the Chief Minister, Miss Qingruo has now reached the age of coming of age. I have long admired the Su family's family values, and it would be a great honor for me to form an alliance through marriage with the Su family. Li Yu's words drifted to my ears on the wind, carrying a sickening air of hypocrisy. My father sat across from me, looking troubled. Although he was an upright man, he knew that the struggle among the princes for the throne was at its height. As the leading family of the Pure Stream faction, if the Su family took sides at this moment, it would be like pushing the entire clan into the fire. Your Highness is too kind. My daughter is a mischievous child. I'm afraid she is not worthy of the royal family's favor, my father said, declining the offer. Just then, Ning Wenqing, who had been sitting nearby grinding ink, suddenly looked up. Today she was wearing an ink-black, straight-collared robe, which made her fair complexion stand out even more. That air of refined, youthful elegance was indeed quite captivating. My esteemed teacher, Ning Wenqing said softly, her voice gentle, the third prince is exceptionally talented and well-educated, and his deep admiration for the chief minister is known throughout the court and the realm. If he were to be paired with senior sister Su, it would indeed be a beautiful story. On the surface, she was agreeing with him, but a subtle glimmer of satisfaction lurked in her eyes. I know what she's thinking. In her past life, she played the same role, stirring things up, because she knew that once I entered the palace, the Su family would be completely tied to Li Yu's cause, making it easier for her to undermine the Su family from within. I smoothed out my cuffs and walked slowly out from behind the screen, a dignified yet distant smile playing on my lips. Your Highness, thank you for your visit. Please forgive us if we have failed to greet you properly upon your arrival. When Li Yu saw me, his eyes lit up instantly. He closed his folding fan and was about to step forward. Qingruo, there's no need for us to be so formal with each other. I sidestepped his perfunctory greeting, walked over, and sat down next to my father, my gaze casually sweeping over Ning Wenqing. From what junior brother Ning just said, it seems he holds the third prince's talent and insight in the highest regard. I turned my head and looked at Ning Wenqing with a smile. Ning Wenqing paused for a moment, then nodded, of course. After reading the insights Your Highness presented in that essay, on the people's livelihood, a few days ago, it was as if a light had been shed on me. Oh. I raised an eyebrow. That works out perfectly. Father often says that junior brother Ning is a man of practical wisdom, and the third prince is so wise. Since your highness has brought his newly drafted policy proposal today, why not ask junior brother Ning to offer some on-the-spot feedback? If junior brother can explain it in detail, it will certainly live up to the reputation of the Su family. Li Yu's expression froze for a moment. Most of his policy essays had been written by advisors in his household. He himself had merely skimmed through them and committed the gist to memory. Although Ning Wenqing was exceptionally talented, her current status was that of a poor student. Asking a student to correct a prince's policy essay was tantamount to slapping Li Yu in the face. But Wenqing couldn't refuse, because this was the opportunity to shine I had given her. Well, Wenqing wouldn't dare overstep his bounds. Sure enough, Ning Wenqing looked troubled. What is there to be afraid of? Since junior brother Ning has become my father's disciple, he will surely become one of the future pillars of the great Qi. The third prince is so eager to recruit talent, surely he won't hold your insightful remarks against you? I looked at Li Yu, my eyes brimming with admiration and innocence. Your Highness, don't you agree? Li Yu, whom I had placed on a pedestal, could only force a smile as he handed the manuscript from his sleeve to Ning Wenqing. Young Master Ning, please speak your mind. Ning Wenqing took the manuscript. At first, she had intended to get by with a few polite platitudes, but as someone who prided herself on her aloofness and possessed an extremely strong competitive spirit, once she got into the swing of things, it was hard for her to hold back. Unconsciously, her critique took on a sharp edge, with every word and sentence pinpointing the logical flaws in Li Yu's essay. Li Yu's face grew darker and darker, and the veins at his temples throbbed slightly. He was a man who valued his reputation above all else. To have his shortcomings pointed out in public by a penniless scholar who hadn't yet passed the imperial examinations was nothing short of a profound humiliation. I stood there watching Ning Wenqing speak eloquently, silently mocking her in my heart. Ning Wenqing, you think your outstanding performance will win his favor, but you don't realize that right now, Li Yu is so furious he'd love nothing more than to tear that sharp tongue of yours to shreds. That's enough. Li Yu sprang to his feet, snatched the manuscript back, and looked at Ning Wenqing with a forced smile. Young Master Ning is indeed brilliant and talented. The chief minister has taken on a fine student. My father also sensed that things were taking a turn for the worse, so he quickly stepped in to smooth things over. But just then, I stood up, walked over to Ning Wenqing, and, in a seemingly affectionate gesture, adjusted her collar. You really are well-read, junior brother, but... I leaned closer to her, lowered my voice, and spoke in a tone only the two of us could hear. The scent of cold plum blossoms on you is indeed pleasant, but why is there a hint of sandalwood powder, a fragrance typically used by women, mingled in it? Could it be that you've found yourself a lover out there? Ning Wenqing's body instantly stiffened like a rock. I could clearly see that her Adam's apple wasn't moving up and down, but because she was so nervous, her chest was heaving violently. The thick corset was clearly restricting her breathing, making her appear somewhat short of breath. Senior sister, you're joking. Wenqing. Wenqing just happened to catch a whiff of the flowers in the back garden a moment ago. She tried her best to stay calm, but her voice trembled slightly. I withdrew my hand and said deliberately in a loud voice, "You're right, my junior brother is still young and easily embarrassed. However, he does look a bit frail. He mustn't let his health suffer from studying too hard in the future." I turned and gave a subtle nod to my personal maid, Auntie Zhao, who was standing behind me. Auntie Zhao was my mother's right-hand woman. She had spent her entire life in this vast, secluded mansion and had an exceptionally keen eye. Auntie Zhao, junior brother Ning has had a heavy course of study these past few days. Please go to the storeroom later and get some top-quality tonics to send over to him. While you're at it, could you give junior brother Ning some advice on his attire? I've noticed that the collar of his robe is always tied so tightly. I'm afraid it might be constricting his throat, making it hard for him to speak clearly. Auntie Zhao was a shrewd woman. Her gaze swept over Ning Wenqing like a sharp arrow, and she immediately replied in a respectful tone, "This old servant obeys your orders." I will certainly take good care of young Master Ning. A flicker of panic crossed Ning Wenqing's eyes. She keenly sensed the danger. As Liu was leaving, he paused at the door and looked at me once more. "Qingruo, you still haven't given this prince an answer regarding what I said earlier." I stood on the steps, looking down at him from above. "Your Highness, Qingruo once made a vow at the Great Buddha Temple. In this lifetime, she would never speak of marriage unless it were to someone with whom she shared a deep connection and who would stand by her through life and death. And besides..." I paused, my tone growing cold and resolute. "Qingruo and Xie Heng, the crown prince of Dingbei, were betrothed long ago. Even though everyone knows there is currently some tension between our two families, in Qingruo's heart, once a contract is sealed, there is no reason to alter it." Li Yu's expression darkened completely. He snorted coldly and stormed off. I knew these words would completely enrage him and that he would take out half of that anger on Ning Wenqing, who had just humiliated him. Upon returning to the mansion, Ning Wenqing was about to go to her room when Matron Zhao blocked her path. "Young Master Ning, the young lady is being considerate of you and has sent this old servant to help you wash and change your clothes." Matron Zhao's face was creased with laughter, yet she reached out and gripped Ning Wenqing's arm tightly. "No need. These are just little things, Wenqing can handle them herself." Ning Wenqing tried to break free, but found that Auntie Zhao's grip was incredibly strong. "That won't do at all. You're a distinguished guest of the chief minister. Come, let me help you take off that outer robe. It's got ink on it, and if it doesn't wash out, it'll ruin the fabric." Without a word, Matron Zhao, along with several lowly maids, tried to drag Ning Wenqing into the room. I stood on the loft not far away, watching the scene unfold. "Ning Wenqing, when you harmed my Su family in your past life, did you ever imagine that in this new life, you'd struggle so hard just to hold on to this body?" A moment later, Aunt Zhao hurried out of Ning Wenqing's guest room, her expression strange and her eyes filled with a mix of surprise and uncertainty. She hurried over to me, leaned close to my ear, and whispered, "Miss, just now, while we were struggling, this old servant managed to touch young Master Ning's back and waist." "Well?" I asked calmly. "How strange." Not only was her body as delicate as silken tofu, but her waist. Her waist was unnaturally slender. And her chest was wrapped in layer upon layer of cloth. This old servant took the opportunity in the commotion to pinch her. She was in so much pain her eyes nearly filled with tears, yet she gritted her teeth and dared not utter a sound. Auntie Zhao spoke in a very low voice, "Young lady, what man in this world would dress like this? This is clearly..." "Auntie, there are some things we'd be better off keeping to ourselves," I interrupted her, a faint smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "It's not time to reveal our hand just yet. Since she's so eager to play this game, we'll play along until the very end. However, I'd appreciate it if you could keep a close eye on the items in her room." "Don't worry, young lady. This old servant understands." I watched the sky outside the window gradually grow darker. "Ning Wenqing, do you really think that just because you've evaded Liu, you can rest easy in the Su family now? In your past life, you used that hypocritical facade to win over everyone in the Su household. In this life, I'll make sure that every step you take in the Su household feels like walking on the edge of a knife." At dinner time, Ning Wenqing did not come out. A messenger relayed that he had caught a slight cold and was unable to receive guests. Father seemed a little worried, but I stood by his side with a smile on my face as I poured him a bowl of soup. "Father, please don't worry. My junior classmate probably just expended too much mental energy commenting on the third prince's essay earlier. He'll be fine after a good night's rest. As for Crown Prince Xie Heng, the ancient text he sent today looks quite impressive to me. Why don't you invite Crown Prince Xie over to our residence tomorrow for a visit, Father?" My father glanced at me and sighed, "You little girl, just a few days ago you were avoiding Xie Heng like the plague. How come you've changed your tune today?" My daughter just suddenly realized who truly cares about her. I lowered my eyelids to hide the sadness in my eyes. In my past life, I pushed away Xie Heng, the one person I should have relied on the most, and ended up abandoned by everyone, even my own family. In this life, I will never make the same mistake again. As for Ning Wenqing, at this very moment, she's probably curled up under the covers, enduring the suffocating sensation of her corset, and nervously calculating how much longer she can keep up the pretense. Ning Wenqing had a cold for 3 days, and during that time, she hardly ever left the house. I knew she was afraid. Aunt Zhao's probing that day, along with my suggestive remarks, were like 2 sharp blades hanging over her head, ready to fall at any moment. But she was a person of great fortitude. Early on the 4th morning, she reappeared in her father's study, her face looking slightly pale. She organized her schoolwork with meticulous care, showed even greater deference to her father than before, and even when facing me, she managed to maintain that flawless, humble smile. It's just a shame that, in my past life, I knew her all too well. The more flawless she appeared, the more it showed that she was secretly plotting an escape route, or perhaps looking for an opportunity to strike back. That afternoon, Xie Heng arrived at the house as agreed. My father was playing Go with him in the side parlor, while I sat behind the folding screen, using the pretext of brewing tea to quietly listen to their every move. The Crown Prince's move today was a bit too hasty, said my father in his aged yet refined voice, followed by the crisp sound of a chess piece landing on the board. A chess game is like a battlefield, it changes in the blink of an eye, and I'm used to striking first. Xie Heng's voice was deep and devoid of any warmth. But the imperial court is not a battlefield. Sometimes, holding one's ground is the best course of action. My father sighed, clearly implying something. I listened to their conversation without pausing my work. In my past life, the Xie family fell into the trap set by Liu and Ning Wenqing precisely because they were too impatient. In this life, I will be the one to hold the hilt of the sword on behalf of the Xie and Su families. Young lady, Xie Heng said as she glided in, speaking in a very low voice right next to my ear. Young Master Ning went to the west gate a moment ago and gave old Wang, the gatekeeper, a letter, saying it was a letter home to a fellow villager. My hand paused slightly as I poured the tea, and a cold smile slowly curled at the corners of my mouth. He took the bait. Ning Wenqing's position was now precarious. She urgently needed to contact her accomplices, the remnants of that corruption case from years past. In fact, she may have already begun to defect to the third prince, Liu, betraying some of the Su family's secrets in exchange for a way out. Got it. Have old Wang proceed as planned, I instructed in a low voice. I had long since bribed old Wang with silver and the promise of a bright future for his family. Half an hour later, that so-called letter from home was slipped into my hands without anyone noticing. The envelope was addressed to Wenqing, Ning County in elegant handwriting. It looked quite ordinary. I warmed the glue on the envelope seal with lukewarm tea and carefully removed the letter. When I unfolded it, I saw that it contained nothing more than an ordinary poem about homesickness. Young lady, isn't this just an ordinary letter from home? Xie Heng asked, somewhat puzzled. Ning Wenqing is so cunning, there's no way she'd leave such an obvious loophole. I laid the sheet of paper flat on the table, picked up a bowl of alum water that had been prepared in advance, dipped my brush into it, and gently applied it to the blank spaces on the paper. After a moment, several lines of tiny characters began to faintly appear on the previously smooth sheet. It was a list, accompanied by a single sentence: the Su family has become suspicious. Immediately check the old case files from back then. There may be trouble. As I looked at those words, my gaze gradually grew cold. The old case she referred to was none other than the case file involving her father, whom my father had sentenced to death by beheading for embezzlement all those years ago. She had indeed joined the Su family to seek revenge, and now that she's realized I'm investigating her, she's in a rush to have outsiders destroy the evidence, and is even trying to turn the tables on me. The writing was done with a special ink that becomes visible when exposed to alum water. I let out a cold laugh, let the letter dry, put it back in the envelope, and sealed it with paste. Xie Heng, give this letter to old Wang and have him send it out as usual. Also, go fetch the crown prince. In no time at all, Xie Heng slipped away unnoticed and made his way to my small study. He changed into a set of black, form-fitting attire that made his figure appear even more upright. As he walked in, he brought with him a gentle, cool spring breeze. Miss Su, Is there something you need from me? He sat down without waiting for a response, his gaze fixed on the teacup in my hand. I pushed the sheet of paper, which had just materialized and then dried up, toward him and got straight to the point. Xie Heng, do me a favor. Xie Heng raised an eyebrow, picked up the letter, and glanced at it. His expression instantly turned sharp. Is this that kid's handwriting? So she really has been secretly conspiring with someone. That's not the most important thing. I want you to help me get this document onto the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Justice's desk. I took a fake official document, one I'd prepared long ago, out of the drawer. Those were some secret clues I had learned in my past life about the Ning family's old case, some true, some false. The most damning of them pointed to a private property the Ning family had secretly purchased in the capital back then, and that very place is now the hideout of one of Liu's aides. Are you trying to lure the snake out of its hole? Xie Heng, true to his military heritage, saw right through my intentions in an instant. Ning Wenqing prides herself on her intelligence. If she finds out that the Supreme Court of Justice has suddenly reopened the old case and uncovered that private property, she'll definitely panic. I looked at Xie Heng, my eyes brimming with certainty. As soon as she panics, she'll rush to move the ledgers or contact her accomplices. At that point, you and your men should stake out the area around that private property and catch her red-handed. Xie Heng looked at me, and a strange emotion flashed across his deep eyes. You've changed a lot, he said suddenly. My hand paused for a moment, and then I gave a self-deprecating smile. Someone who's died once should know better. Xie Heng didn't press the matter. He tucked the forged official document into his coat, stood up, and looked down at me with an air of unquestionable resolve in his voice. Tonight, I'll personally lead a team to guard that spot. If she dares to show her face, I guarantee she'll never be able to return to the Su family. No, don't rush to arrest her just yet, I called out to him, a cold gleam in my eyes. If you arrest her, father will only think it's a frame-up by outsiders, he might even spare her out of old affection for her father. What I want is for father to see her true colors with his own eyes. Tonight, all you need to do is secure irrefutable evidence of her collusion with the enemy. As for the rest, wait until my father's birthday banquet in 5 days. Xie Heng gave me a deep look and nodded slightly. All right, I'll do as you say. Watching him walk away, I slowly let out a sigh of relief. Ning Wenqing, in a past life, you used a forged secret letter to have my entire Su family executed. In this life, I'll give you a secret letter, too. Only this one will be the noose you yourself will place around your neck on the gallows. As the night grew deeper and the dew grew heavier, only a single oil lamp, no bigger than a soybean, burned in the Su family's library. I stood in the shadows outside the attic, watching as that slender figure, like a bird startled by a bowstring, dodged the night watchman and slipped silently into the study. That was Ning Wenqing. Or rather, it was Ning Wenqing, who was in a hurry to destroy the evidence. The information Xie Heng gave me was extremely accurate. Rumors deliberately leaked from the Ministry of Justice claimed that an unopened secret letter had been discovered in a hidden compartment at the Ning family's old residence, one that implicated the true mastermind behind the embezzlement case from years ago. For Ning Wenqing, this news was undoubtedly a death sentence. She was certain that the letter would eventually reach my father, the current chief minister, so she couldn't wait any longer. She had to completely eliminate this potential threat on the eve of my father's birthday. I didn't wake her right away. Instead, I quietly counted my heartbeats and kept track of the time. Squeak, came the faint sound of a window opening. Ning Wenqing stepped out of the study, her arms bulging with items. Clearly, she had succeeded. She was in such a hurry that she didn't notice a pair of cold eyes watching her every move from the attic diagonally above her. Miss, she took it, Xie Heng whispered from behind me, a hint of nervousness in her voice. What was taken was the death warrant I prepared for her with my own hands, I said, curling the corners of my mouth into a cold smile. Let's go. It's time to meet our crown prince Xie. Deep within the alley behind the Su residence, Xie Heng was waiting in the shadows, leading a sleek, jet-black steed. He still carried the chill of the late night, and as I approached, he unobtrusively shielded me from the wind blowing in from the alley entrance. She went to that mansion in the southern part of the city, Xie Heng said in a low voice. Just as I expected, the person who met her there was indeed a confidant from the third prince's household. My heart skipped a beat. Although I had long suspected it, hearing with my own ears that Ning Wanqing and Liu had already joined forces sent a chill down my fingertips. Did you get the evidence? I asked. Xie Heng took a stack of letters from his sleeve and handed them to me. My men intercepted these outside that mansion. They were the letters of loyalty she was preparing to send to the palace. Not only do they detail the Su family's network of connections within the court, but they also contain fabricated evidence that Chief Minister Su was collaborating with the enemy. I glanced around in the faint moonlight, and cold sweat broke out on my palms. In my past life, it was this very piece of evidence that brought down the Su family overnight. In this life, she had actually prepared for it in advance. Xie Heng, could you make this evidence look a little more real? I looked up at him, a flash of ruthlessness crossing my eyes. Xie Heng paused for a moment, then realized what I meant, and a look of admiration flashed in his eyes. You want to turn the tables? Since she wants to give my father a big gift, I'll help her make sure it's presented in a more dignified manner. I'll make sure everyone watches with their own eyes as she, stroke by stroke, personally ruins her own future. 3 days later, the banquet celebrating Chief Minister Su Jinda's 50th birthday took place as scheduled. Traffic flowed constantly in front of the Su residence, and the capital's high-ranking officials and dignitaries had gathered there. Today, my father was dressed in a deep purple official robe. Though it was a family banquet, his air of authority remained undiminished. Ning Wanqing was exceptionally attentive today. She had changed into a newly tailored scholar's robe and moved among the guests, her speech and demeanor fully embodying the grace of a student from a distinguished family, earning her the admiration of many of her colleagues. Minister Su is truly blessed to have such an outstanding student. He is sure to become a pillar of the great Qi Empire in the future, the Minister of Personnel said with a smile to his father. My father stroked his beard and laughed heartily, clearly quite pleased with Ning Wanqing's recent progress. I sat at the banquet table, watching Ning Wanqing's confident and triumphant demeanor with a cold gaze. She probably thought that once the banquet reached its climax, she could use the opportunity of toasting to reveal that evidence to everyone, and in doing so, turn the tables to become a hero who exposed corruption, completely break free from the Su family's control, and run off with Liu. Qingruo, what are you thinking about? A deep voice asked from beside her. I turned my head and saw Xie Heng holding a wine cup, but his gaze remained fixed on Ning Wanqing. I'm waiting for that show to start, I whispered. After 3 rounds of toasts, Ning Wanqing indeed stood up. Holding her wine cup, she walked to the center of the main hall, bowed deeply to her father, and spoke in a clear, resonant voice that echoed throughout the entire courtyard. Your Excellency, I, Wanqing, have been in your service for quite some time and have benefited greatly from your guidance. Today, on the occasion of your birthday, I not only bring a modest cup of wine, but also have a matter of great importance concerning both you and the imperial court that I must report publicly. The noise at the table gradually subsided, and everyone's eyes turned to her. My father furrowed his brow slightly and set down his wine glass. Wanqing, this is a family dinner. Isn't there something we can discuss privately? This is a matter of great importance, and Wanqing dares not keep it to himself. While organizing ancient texts, Wanqing unexpectedly discovered a secret letter from a previous dynasty. The revelations contained within have kept Wanqing awake all night, leaving him no choice but to seek justice from his mentor and all of you, distinguished officials. As Ning Wanqing spoke, he slowly pulled a thick letter from his sleeve. Her eyes betrayed a wild determination to succeed at all costs. I waited for the right moment, then suddenly stood up, pretending to be too drunk to stand, slipped, and bumped right into Ning Wanqing. "Ah," I gasped. Ning Wanqing instinctively tried to dodge, but the silver needle I had hidden in my sleeve struck her calf with precision. She winced in pain, staggered, and the letter she was holding fell to the ground. Losing her balance, she fell heavily onto the basin of ice placed in the middle of the hall. Rip, came the sharp sound of fabric tearing. A large tear was ripped in Ning Wenqing's outer robe by the sharp edge of the ice basin. The layers of undergarments she had originally worn to conceal her identity fell apart before everyone's eyes, revealing a corner of her bright red women's bodice and the white silk corset wrapped tightly around her chest in layer upon layer. The room was silent. Everyone stared wide-eyed as the refined young man, who had been so full of confidence just moments ago, suddenly transformed into a disheveled woman. You're a girl? My father jumped to his feet in shock, and the wine cup in his hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Ning Wenqing, no, Ning Wenqing. Her face was deathly pale. Paying no heed to the letters on the ground, she frantically tried to pull her collar closed. But the impact of the collision had been so forceful that the Adam's apple she had so carefully disguised had shifted to one side as the fake skin slipped off, looking both comical and grotesque. I slumped down beside him, my face a mixture of shock and fear. Junior brother Ning. Why? Why are you a woman? What exactly are your intentions in infiltrating my Su family? Ning Wenqing pointed at me with a trembling hand, her voice shrill. It's you. Su Qingruo, you're the one who ruined me. Hurt you? I sneered, picked up the letter she had just dropped from the ground, but instead of handing it to her, I presented it directly to my father. Father, since this letter concerns the law of the land, please take a look at it yourself. My father took the letter with trembling hands. Ning Wenqing tried to lunge forward to snatch it, but Xie Heng, quick on his feet, grabbed her shoulder, leaving her unable to move. Let me go. That's proof that Su Xinde is collaborating with the enemy. Let me go. Ning Wenqing shouted hysterically. However, the moment my father laid eyes on the contents of the letter, his expression changed. It wasn't evidence of collaboration with the enemy, but rather authentic correspondence between Ning Wenqing and Liyu's advisors over the past few days, as well as her sinister plot to exploit the Su family's reputation to gradually undermine the Qinglu faction. Most damning of all was that on the back of that letter was the original document, irrefutable evidence of the Ning family's embezzlement case from years ago, bearing the seal of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Justice. I had Xie Heng borrow this original document from the Ministry of Justice. You wretch! You're nothing but a wretch. My father was shaking with rage as he violently flung the letter in Ning Wenqing's face. The Su family has treated you well, yet you dared to disguise yourself as a man, deceive the emperor, and even conspire with foreign enemies to put me in mortal danger. Ning Wenqing looked at the sheets of paper scattered across the floor, and it was as if she'd been struck by lightning. She stared at the handwriting, her own, which detailed crimes she had never committed, yet which were undeniably true. She finally realized that she had fallen into a carefully laid trap. Guards! Arrest the sorceress and take her to the Ministry of Justice for investigation. My father shouted angrily. As Ning Wenqing was dragged away, she kept her gaze fixed on me. The venomous hatred in her eyes was enough to reduce me to ashes. I stood quietly behind my father, watching her figure disappear into the night. She lost that game completely. Thank you, Prince Xia, I said softly as I walked over to Xie Heng. Xie Heng looked at me. In the moonlight, his expression was somewhat complex. Miss Su, you've executed this using someone else's hand to kill maneuver quite masterfully. However, I'm afraid the third prince won't let this slide. If he dares to come, I'll be ready for him. I turned my head to look at the birthday banquet, now in complete disarray, yet I felt a sense of peace I had never experienced before. On the third day after Ning Wenqing was imprisoned, it snowed heavily in the capital. Instead of the third Prince Liyu's furious retaliation, what I received was an imperial edict stripping me of my title, drafted by my father himself and personally approved by the emperor. Behind that secret letter lay not only irrefutable evidence of Ning Wenqing's collusion with the enemy, but also all the ledgers Xie Heng had secretly compiled over the years documenting Liyu's embezzlement of military rations and factionalism. Taken together, the evidence was overwhelming. The emperor, enraged in the imperial study, smashed the memorial Liu had submitted pleading for mercy right there on the spot. Liu was placed under house arrest for life at the imperial household department, while Ning Wanqing was sentenced to be executed after the autumn harvest. The night before the execution, I went to the imperial prison. Through the cold iron bars, I saw the once glorious refined scholar. She was now disheveled and filthy, her prison garb in tatters, and the exposed skin on her body was covered with red marks from the interrogation. When she saw me, her eyes, which had once been as clear as autumn water, flashed with a beast-like ferocity. "Su Qingruo. When did you start suspecting me?" Her voice was hoarse, as if it had been rubbed against sandpaper. I stood in front of the haystack, looking down at her from above, my expression so calm that even I was surprised by it. "From the very first day you walked through the door," I whispered. She burst into a self-deprecating laugh, laughing so hard that tears streamed down her face. "The very first day? I'd say I was flawless. I even fooled Chief Minister Su. You, a spoiled young lady who knows nothing but romance and frivolity, what makes you think you can do any better? I've died once." My voice was so soft that only the two of us could hear it. Ning Wanqing's laughter stopped abruptly, and she looked at me in horror, as if she were looking at a monster. "In a past life, you used the same method to infiltrate the Su household, ruined my engagement, poisoned my loved ones, and finally, in that cold palace, personally served me that cup of poison wine." I leaned in and looked her straight in the eyes. "Ning Wanqing, I've remembered the taste of that cup of wine my entire life. In this life, I've simply paved the path you're about to walk, a little earlier than you expected." She trembled as she backed away until her back bumped against the cold stone wall. "It can't be. Reincarnation. How could that be? Nothing is impossible." I suppressed the coldness in my eyes and stood up. "You think you're here to seek revenge, but you don't realize that from the moment you set foot in the Su family's home, you've been paying for my life with yours. After you die, I'll plead with Father to have you buried in the mass grave. That place is heavy with yin energy, it's just right for a lonely spirit like you, full of schemes." I stopped listening to her hysterical screams, turned around, and walked out through the prison door that let in no light. As I stepped out of the celestial prison, snowflakes drifted down and settled on my shoulders. Xie Heng was waiting at the foot of the stone steps, holding a green bamboo umbrella. He had changed into civilian clothes. The fierce aura of the battlefield had faded somewhat, replaced by a gentler, more refined demeanor. "Is everything settled?" he asked in a low voice, taking the cold hand warmer from my hand and replacing it with a piping hot one. "It's over," I said, letting out a long sigh as I gazed at the vast, mist-shrouded capital in the distance. It seemed as though all the pent-up frustration from 2 lifetimes had melted away with this heavy snowfall. "What are your plans from here on out?" He turned his head to look at me, a hint of cautious hope in his eyes. I stopped in my tracks and turned to look at him. In my past life, I avoided him like the plague, misunderstood his well-intentioned efforts, and even kicked him when he was down while he was working tirelessly for the Su family. But in this life, he has always stood by my side, wielding the sword for me and shielding me from arrows. Father said that the heir to the Xie family is of noble character, so the wedding date can be moved up to next month. I deliberately avoided his gaze, staring instead at the cloud patterns on the hem of his robe. I saw his hand holding the umbrella tighten suddenly, and immediately afterward, a low, satisfied chuckle escaped from his chest. "Since it is the chief minister's wish, I, Xie, will certainly pay a dowry of 10,000 taels to ensure I do not disappoint the young lady." He folded up his umbrella and, in full view of everyone, took my hand. His palm was broad and warm, a sense of security I had never experienced in my past life. The Su family was saved, and my father remained the same admired, incorruptible figure in the imperial court. As for me, I was no longer a puppet at the mercy of others. As the wind and snow gradually subsided, the sound of the palace bells rang out from afar, distant and solemn. I know that this life, Su Qingruo's life, has only just truly begun. That decaying, chilling, and scheming past will all be buried beneath the lingering snow of early spring. In its place, amidst the lights of 1,000 homes in this era of prosperity, stands the most ordinary yet most precious of all. The story is now complete. Thank you for listening. Feel free to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.